Well, King Charles was just 16 when he first visited Australia to attend school. Since then, he's developed a close affection for our country and has made 16 official tours. One of the most memorable was back in 1994. Paul Keating was PM, the Republican debate was raging, and there was also a major security scare. But all of that didn't stop Prince Charles sitting down with Ray Martin.
From Government House in Brisbane, a very special edition of A Current Affair. Relaxed and candid as you've never seen before, a conversation with Prince Charles.
Thank you again for your time, we appreciate it. We get so little chance to know what you think. Others tell us what you think, but we get so little chance. But the tour of the 12 days, how was it? Out of 10, how would you rate it?
Well, the trouble is it's not a holiday. It's always one of those terrible things when you meet people in the crowd who say, "Are you enjoying your holiday?" And it's not like a private visit, you know, because it's so public and rushing about and official and programmed every second. It's not quite like being able to go and do all sorts of other things. But it's been terribly enjoyable and marvellous to see so many people, and I've been all over the place. But I never know which time zone I'm in.
No.
I can't remember whether I'm coming or going, but anyway.
The taxi driver that I got up here today, he said, which I think every Australian would say, it's a bugger of a job. Your job's a bugger of a job. Is it?
How nice of him to be so sympathetic. Well, I mean, occasionally I bump into people in the UK or elsewhere, so I wouldn't mind your job. I'd be delighted. Try it any time they like. But like all people's jobs, you'll find that it isn't actually what it appears to be.
Yes. Is there one thing, one impression, one indelible impression over the last 12 days here that sticks in, what I ask you now? Something stands out?
Well, one of the things I was very impressed by personally was when I met all these religious and ethnic leaders in Sydney, and to hear what they were saying about how marvellous it was to live in Australia and how splendid the whole sort of multicultural approach was, and what a great country Australia was in terms of its tolerance and everything else, and giving people a fair go. And I mean, that I think is so marvellous, is that it does set a great example to people all over the world.
But you know us so well. I mean, in 13th visit now, I mean, is that the major change you've seen in those 13 visits? We've become, from the days when you first came here, we were basically British, yes. And now we are multicultural.
Well, yes, absolutely. But I think it's from what I can tell, and obviously there are problems here and there, inevitably. Nothing's ever perfect, and that people have lots of complaints. But generally speaking, it seems that it's a remarkably encouraging situation, I think, with people being able to pursue their own particular cultural activities within a wider framework. And it does enrich things, I think, very often, rather than cause too many problems.
I was looking at, in preparing the interview, I was looking at something you said in the 70s. You said that for some reason you couldn't explain, that each time you come back to Australia, you experience a sensation that I belong. Do you still feel like you belong?
Well, I mean, it's 6 years since I came, unfortunately, and that's, I mean, mainly because there's so many other places to go and people I have to visit and things, one has to do. I mean, there is still Canada and New Zealand and other parts of the Commonwealth and Europe we've got to worry about. Well, you're worrying about, the Pacific Rim and Asia. We've got to worry about Europe, inevitably. But also to try and keep the Commonwealth ties going. I mean, the difficulty I have is that I can't delegate myself off in different directions. If there was more of me, I could send one of me to Australia, and another one to wherever else it is, to try and do all the things that I would love to be able to do. But I still always, have this basic, fundamental affection for Australia, having lived here for 6 months.
Yes.
And nobody can ever take that away from me. I've still got all the friends that I met, and I always keep in touch with them. And
you said Australia actually cured you of your shyness. What did that mean? Was that
as I said, I think on previous occasions that I came out here aged 16 or something. Never been away really anywhere, and I wasn't endowed with an overabundant degree of confidence. But I had to sink or swim, really, here. And I began to swim, really, because everybody was friendly and open and generous and typical Australian sort of characteristics, really. I mean, they can bloody well tell you what they think at the same time. And I like the forthrightness.
You wrote about that when you went to Gordon afterwards. You wrote in the school magazine something I never heard you tell the story about how you're walking from across the dorm, I think, and carrying an umbrella one day. And
yes.
Can you tell us the story?
I thought I had told it.
Not on camera.
No. I see you have been doing your research well. No, because you see, when I was at Timbertop, I was about 2 years older, or a year and a half older than all the other boys there. And so I found myself sort of half master, half boy, in a sort of desperate kind of prefect role. So I had to go and make sure they were all organised, and switch the lights out in the dormitory. And one night it was pouring with rain, as usual, so I went out with my umbrella. And as I was walking through the dormitory, switched the lights out, I heard someone shout, "Pommy bastard!" And as it turned out, it happened to be somebody from the UK anyway. It wasn't an Australian.
But I think you said at the time it was marvellous. You sort of felt like you'd actually been accepted at that point.
Well, I suppose I was, to a certain extent, yes.
Given the affinity, and it may be beyond your control, would you like to be King of Australia?
Well, put it this way, I as I say, I've always had a great affection for Australia and for Australians. And all I've ever tried to do, as far as Australia is concerned, is to try and help and encourage and assist in whatever way I can. Obviously under limited conditions because of the distance involved and the fact that I find myself in the UK a lot of the time and also having to do other things. But that's all I've ever wanted to do, is to help. But I think what it is very important to get across about all this, and all as a result of all this debate about a republic or whatever, is that my family, or the sovereign, and we as a family don't own this place. It doesn't belong, and it's not as if we're making money out of it. And this is what annoys me so much that's written in the media, in inverted commas, is that this extraordinary idea that, you're liable to be denied the great chance to be King of Australia. As if it was, taking a toy away from a spoilt child. But I could understand everybody desperately, hanging on, well, if you were making money out of this place. But it's very important to remember that that is not the case.
Yes.
All that anybody has ever tried to do is to help, and assist and encourage, and bring people together and try to see what we can do.
But do you care in that case? Is the other side of that? Do you care whether you are or you're not?
But I think it's up to Australians to decide how they want it to be. It's not up to me to decide.
Yes. The Prime Minister said after the speech in Darling Harbour, he said that he thought that you'd given Australia a nod and a wink. He said to me, I think that Prince Charles has given us a nod and a wink to go on with the debate. Is that what you did?
No, I don't think so. But you know perfectly well how people interpret things in the way they want to interpret things. And, some people will see one thing in it, somebody will see something else. All I said, and I can only say it again, is that it is up to the Australian people to have the debate, which is perfectly understandable and perfectly reasonable and a jolly good sign of a sensible democracy, to have these sorts of debates. But some people will see advantage in keeping the existing system. Others will see advantages in changing it. All I think is that this debate, if it's allowed to take place in the right way, and if it isn't just put across in a rather biased way by certain sections of the media, then some people may begin to discover actually a lot of hidden advantages and hidden aspects of the existing system which are taken for granted but are not realised at the moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Because if you are actually going to change the whole thing, it's worth actually bringing the whole thing out and looking at it and perhaps putting it back again, if you know what I mean, so that you decide exactly what you're going to have or you're not going to have.
The tour overall, and again, the British press and some Australian press talked about it as a PR exercise, as a photo opportunity. What was it to you?
Well, it's pretty predictable, isn't it, that they'd say that? Because, as I say, they've written the agenda 9 times out of 10 before you go anywhere, including the script for a soap opera that they want to continue, which bears very little relation to reality. But I've been able this time to ensure that the programme reflects the sort of areas that I am interested in, a lot of the things I try to do in the UK, and to take an interest in particular areas, which I hope perhaps by showing an interest one can encourage people or bring a greater degree of awareness to the things that are being done well.
As a catalyst rather than a
Yes,
figurehead for it.
That's what I do in the UK.
Yes.
I spend my life trying to bring people together, because one of the few things that I can do, I think, which others can't, by the very nature of the situation I find myself in, is actually bring people together, because I haven't got a political axe to grind, so people know that I haven't got an axe to grind. They're more likely to come together from all different sides, people who shout at each other across blinking great chasms most of the time with megaphones.
Yes.
And by bringing them together, you can so often create something much more worthwhile than otherwise would be the case.
Yes, there isn't time for us, unfortunately, to talk about all those areas that you've been to here, but I mean, the street kids, the Aborigines, the farmers, the hospice, the business people, the environmental people and so on that you went. I just wondered, even, let's say when you're with the Aborigines, for half an hour in that rock art gallery, was there time to smell the wildflowers? Was there time to feel the spirituality of that place?
Well, not with 45 representatives of the media there.
Yes.
But
again, can I? Well, you're the boss. Why did you simply say, sorry,
I'm not
folks?
the boss.
You're not the boss.
No, it doesn't work like that.
Okay.
Don't you start thinking that we rule or something. It doesn't work like that.
But But you can't say to your staff, you can't say to the person, look, hang on, I want to spend a day or 2 days up there.
Of course I could, but I mean, how am I going to get round all the things I'm meant to be getting round? But I did manage to get a little bit of the flavour of that area, but a bit. And there was a splendid character, Aboriginal gentleman who showed us around and was full of stories and said, well, I could get you in the bush for a week. He said, I'd show you a thing or two.
Yes.
I bet he could too.
And you said about Highgrove, I read in your book, that you said that every flower, every plant, every spot, every stone has a soul of its own, a feel. Now, certainly that's what Aboriginal people think out there, don't they? Every one of their pieces of nature has a soul.
Yes. Well, it's all part of the great soul, isn't it, whatever you like to call it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all part of the divine, I suppose, ultimately. No, I mean, I said in the book, I don't know whether you read it, I didn't actually say that, but I mean, I just said that, there is a sense of the sacred, which I feel very strongly about the land and about the way in which we treat it.
Do you ever get a chance, though, to actually put your hands in the soil, to get a chance to get dirty? Because so often the media, with the photographs we see, is Prince Charles with a sweater on and a tie and a shovel.
Oh, really?
I mean, do you actually get dirty?
Of course I bloody well do, yes.
We never see it.
No, of course not. No, because I don't invite the press in all the time when I'm doing these things. But, I mean, it doesn't really say because you don't see it, I don't do it.
I must ask you, Australia Day,
Yeah.
a young man bolts out of the crowd and 2 shots are fired. What did you think? What was going on?
Well, first of all, I found myself standing up there on the platform, waiting, as I thought, for 2 young achievers to come up and be given their prizes by me. And I couldn't understand. I was standing there, nothing was happening, looking around, wondering what was happening. And I thought perhaps they're going to come up the central aisle where the others had come up to receive their prize. And suddenly, up from the right-hand side, jumps a chap, running like hell towards me. And I thought, this chap's hellish keen on getting his prize, I think. And,
You thought it was one of the kids?
Well, the trouble is with these things, it's very difficult to tell the difference between what is part of the proceedings and what is actually, what you call an incident, that something, isn't meant to be happening. And it was by the time it had gone, I mean, I was thinking, that's very peculiar, what's this man trying to do? The next thing, I was hit by my policeman, you see, and barged to one side, and then the Premier and 25 other policemen disappeared in a sort of immense scrum around here. And
so you weren't super cool, you just didn't know what was going on?
Well, I mean, I didn't run away or anything else. There was no point. But I mean, I think you just get on with it.
Yes.
Whatever's going on. But I mean, if the chap had hit me in some way or other, I would have been slightly different. But it's quite difficult. What do you do if somebody's running straight at you? I didn't know what he was doing. But by the time, it takes time, fun enough, for you realise we're not all made like James Bond, or Indiana Jones. I mean, you don't just step to one side and go blat as somebody goes past you. Or like they always can do, get into an aeroplane, start it up and fly it, having never seen what the aeroplane's like. It doesn't happen in real life.
What do you think later, when you got back afterwards and before you went to bed, did you think, that could have been close?
Oh yes, I mean certainly. You know, you never know. He could have been carrying a real gun, or whatever. But I mean, if you think about these things all the time, you can't actually get on with life. That's the problem. Other people have to think of these things who are trained. I mean, I'm not trained to constantly look around and see if somebody's going to come and attack me.
We appreciate the time. Thank you. Good luck.
Yes.